Time next for the business news with France 24's Kate Moody. Kate, countdown for Brexit. Sounds like New Year's Eve, doesn't it?
Feels nothing like it, I don't think.
But there's some less encouraging news about the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on the eve of the UK's exit from the European Union, the Bank of England surprised some analysts by keeping its main interest rate on hold, even as it slashed its estimates for economic growth. The central bank predicted the economy would expand only 0.8% this year, down from 1.2% in its previous forecast. The principal risks were identified as Brexit uncertainties and a weaker global outlook. Some policymakers had suggested cutting interest rates from 0.75% in order to try and boost the stagnating economy. It was the last policy meeting for the outgoing bank governor, Mark Carney. He'll be replaced by the head of the Financial Conduct Authority, Andrew Bailey. While production of cars in the UK plunged 14% in 2019 to the lowest level in a decade. The auto industry says it's facing huge uncertainty because of Brexit. Honda and Nissan are among the global brands that have announced factory closures or shifted production out of the country in preparation. 80% of the vehicles produced in the UK are exported, about half of them to the EU, while some 40% of the components are imported. That means a quick and comprehensive trade deal will be crucial to the industry's health post-Brexit.
The big fear is you get to the end of this year and we still have no trading deal. The UK automotive industry offers tremendous value to the UK economy in terms of exports, in terms of employment, in terms of contribution to the exchequer, high value jobs, a lot of innovation, especially in areas that they want to level up. Hence, we're an industry that should be at the forefront of the trade negotiations.
Meanwhile, border officials in France are getting ready to put a new customs process in place at its ports. The UK's business with France amounts to 60 billion euros per year, and British truck drivers will have to adapt to some new rules. Monty Francis has the story.
Commercial trucks like this one are among the 5 million a year that cross the English Channel and North Sea in transit from the UK to France. For the moment, custom agents are going about their usual jobs, but once Brexit is officially enacted, all commercial vehicles from the UK will have to go through a new process. If they don't meet the guidelines, they may be forced to park and wait for an inspection.
Thanks to our smart border process, drivers can make their customs declarations before arriving at the port, while the truck is still on the ferry.
Once drivers make their declarations, they will receive a text message letting them know if they can directly leave the port on arrival or if they'll have to pull over for further checks.
There are coded colors. It's very clear, green or orange. It will let them know if they have to park in the waiting zone so they can undergo an inspection.
The new technology is part of a €50 million plan to prevent long waits at French ports, which includes the salaries of 700 additional French border agents. France's Revenue and Customs Agency is hoping it's money well spent, making for a smooth transition post-Brexit.
The U.S. Secretary of State is in the UK, dialing back some of the Trump administration's earlier rhetoric when it comes to Huawei. The White House had earlier threatened to stop sharing intelligence with allies that didn't agree to ban the Chinese tech giant. The top economic advisor now says a decision on that has not yet been made, even though Mike Pompeo suggested that ties would not be altered. Well, earlier this week, the British government said it would allow Huawei to play a role in developing its fifth generation or 5G mobile technology, while restricting its access to sensitive parts of the network. It led to speculation that Washington could hold back on negotiating a trade deal with the UK, a crucial step post-Brexit. But Secretary Pompeo said the allies would still have a special relationship.
This isn't about any one company. This is about a model that the Chinese Communist Party has, where they place requirements on these businesses that say, thou shalt do. We all have to work together to make sure that we develop, not only for next month or next year, a sound set of alternatives that deliver best-in-class technology to every one of our citizens in our democracy. I'm confident that we will get there.
The American economy grew at its weakest pace in 3 years, 2.3% for 2019. New data showed GDP growth of 2.1% for the final 3 months of the year. It means the economy once again falls short of the Trump administration's ambitious 3% growth target. Consumer spending, a driver of the U.S. economy, showed signs of slowing, while corporate investment and manufacturing also weakened. Well, let's check in on the day's trading action now. Global markets are slipping once again on Thursday as the coronavirus continues to spread and more companies try to limit their exposure. Wall Street is trending down. We're seeing shares of Facebook have plunged as much as 8% earlier in the session. That wiped a whopping $50 billion off its market value. The shares have recovered slightly now. They're still down over 6%, though, after the social media giant reported slow revenue. The major European indices also closed sharply lower, 1.4% of losses across the board there. This even though the Eurozone's unemployment rate dropped to a 12-year low. Deutsche Bank shares rose 4% as it presses ahead with a major restructuring plan, despite full-year losses that topped 5 billion euros. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has opened talks with the unions about how to finance proposed reforms to the pension system. Earlier this month, the government made a major concession by pulling back its so-called pivot age, which would have seen most people work longer to receive full benefits. But now that it's agreed to stick to the retirement age at 62, the Macron administration says the system will be left with a funding gap of 12 billion euros. The negotiations are expected to last through at least April. The Indian government is set to unveil its spending plans for 2020. The budget comes against a backdrop of slow economic growth and weak purchasing power. Karis Garland explains.
Vegetables that should normally be a household staple are now a luxury item for many Indians. This 50-year-old woman says she works through the night after taking 2 jobs just to earn 15,000 rupees a month, about 190 euros.
We can't cook anything without onions, so we can't afford such high prices. We have to think twice before buying anything. We have to think about whether to cook with 1 onion or 2 onions, because vegetables are so expensive. We can't afford it.
Revealing its 2020 budget on Saturday, Narendra Modi's government will be under pressure as the country battles high inflation and record unemployment. The budget is expected to focus on boosting the agricultural economy and infrastructure spending. But the current situation has locals worried, with some not able to find work, and even when they do, wages fall short.
It takes a full year for a domestic worker to earn what a tech company CEO earns in 10 minutes. Average income of a household in this country, which is from the periodic labor force surveys, is around 10,000 rupees per month.
That's the equivalent of 126 euros. But not everyone is suffering. A report released by Oxfam last week said the wealth of India's top 1% increased by almost a half in the past year. But for many others, purse strings remain tight.
Greta Thunberg has applied for trademark protection for her name and the environmental campaign that she spearheads. The 17-year-old activist said both her name and the Fridays for Future slogan were increasingly being used for commercial purposes or fundraising without her consent. She and her family are also creating a nonprofit organization to handle the financial side of the Fridays for Future movement. By filing for a trademark, Delano, that means that Greta would be allowed to file legal action against people who use either her name or that slogan.
This has to be Greta Thunberg or just Greta?
I think it's Greta Thunberg. I don't think she's getting that precious about her first name. Certainly not the only one to be called it, is she?
That's true. Good to know. Thank you very much for that, Kate Moody, there with a look at today's business news.